Hello there everybody and welcome to Winterfell. What's left of it anyway. My name is Adam You what? Oh god, yes, sorry, of course. Could spot that. My name is Adam Cleary and welcome to how I would personally rewrite the Battle of Winterfell. Now, full disclosure, I actually really liked the episode. I think when you've got that many different plot lines and tangents and characters and stories and everything to wrap up, they hit pretty much every major beat you'd expect them to hit, but that doesn't mean it can't be improved upon. You see, heading into the finale of the season, that episode sort of feels like it's left a few things out. There's unanswered questions, there's characters that feel like a spare part, there are things we really wanted to see, which we now will probably not ever get to see. And I don't just mean because of the lighting. So yes, with that in mind, and the correct drinking vessel in shot, my name is Adam Cleary, and this is how I would have rewritten the Battle of Winterfell. Alright, so first off, the Army of the Dead are what? They are the greatest threat the world has ever known. We're told this on TV repeatedly for 7 years. The biggest threat the world has ever known, but you have to actually show us that. And the first problem the episode has is that nobody back home watching is actually a medieval battle expert, and yet we all sat there and went, why would you have the Dothraki just charge them on their own? That's really dumb. The whole flickering light scene is absolutely stunning. It's actually my favorite bit of the whole episode, actually, but it just doesn't really establish them as a threat. It makes the Dothraki look stupid and our heroes look like they haven't got a clue what they're doing, so you have to tweak that ever so slightly. So what I'm pitching isn't a major change. I would still have the flickering lights imagery of them all going out as the dead approach, but I would have beacons on the battlefield. I would have Jorah or Paul or Graham or whoever you like riding back to Winterfell, lighting all these beacons along their way to light up the battlefield. And then, just like the episode, slowly, one by one, they all twinkle out and we get that same image, that same sense of dread, that same building threat and noise that we got there. And finally, they all crash headfirst into the Unsullied, the Knights of the Vale, the Free Folk, and the Northmen, just like they did in the show. And then you have the Dothraki that can come from the side, behind, wherever you like, just somewhere that makes a lot more tactical sense. They are this mounted cavalry division that Robert Baratheon said was unbeatable in an open field, so give them an open field and have them be beaten. That way you are having your best possible chance of beating them, and it's still apparently isn't enough. Slowly, one by one, the shrieks, the war cries of the Dothraki start to go silent, and you realize that, oh god, we're doing everything we can here, and we're still not winning. This might be unwinnable. From there, just like the episode, we go up to the cliff top where Jon and Dany are waiting for the Night King. Dany sees that the battle is not going their way, so she wants to depart on Drogon. Jon tries to tell her, don't do it, we have to wait for the Night King, and she says, no, the dead are already here. But this time, instead of them both going, I would just have Dany go, because she's the impulsive one. She's the one who can't compromise, but Jon is the rational head. He stays there with Rhaegal while Dany swoops off to burn all the undead, split them up at this point. Now, I actually think the episode did a really good job of getting that horror of warfare transmitted across to the viewer in the next couple of segments, but I would try and make this next bit longer, make it feel more like the Battle of the Bastards, get that claustrophobia, that inability to breathe, that suffocating threat of warfare. I would get that in the episode as well. I'd have a full 10-15 minute sequence of people just going hand to hand with the dead while Dany swoops in from above, burning everything in sight. That's the next major chunk of the episode. Would also have this be the bit where Dolorous Edd gets killed and Sam can't save him, so keep that in mind. And as soon as Ed dies, I would cut back to Jon at the top of the cliff. He's still waiting for the Night King. You can see it's killing him that he can't go and help his friends. He can't go fight for Winterfell. But just then, he sees the shadow of a dragon. Much in the same way he saw all the White Walkers lined up at the edge of the battlefield. He sees the shadow of a dragon. He jumps on Rhaegal and he goes off in pursuit. But just like in the show, he's swept away by this massive storm. He doesn't quite get to the Night King. That's one. Now from here, the next few beats are pretty much exactly what happened in the episode. I get all our nice touching character moments in the crypts, except I would already have Melisandre down there having turned up in the last episode, but that's by the by. And you've also got Dany burning everything, everybody fighting the undead, but things not going very well, and we get the cry to fall back. Now, while in the episode, the Unsullied protected everybody's retreat, that didn't really seem to make a lot of sense, because there's only like a couple of hundred of them, and there was these tens of thousands of the dead, and they were just kind of standing there with lances. So what would actually have happen here is Dany lands right in front of the Unsullied to protect them while they protect the retreat. The same way she landed Drogon in the actual episode. She puts down and she just burns everything that's coming towards them. She shields everybody in the north so they can get back into Winterfell. And what I'm effectively trying to do here is move this bit from the end of the episode to somewhere near the start. The way she lands to save Jon and the dead pile up on Drogon, have her do this here, but where she's protecting everyone in the north. They start getting on top of a dragon, he flies away, she falls off, and she is on the battlefield alone, isolated with everybody retreating around her and the dead coming towards her. And I'd also move the Jorah moment to here as well, because we need a really important big early death in the episode. The Free Folk, the Knights of the Vale, everyone from the north are piling past Dany. They are not helping her. He sees her. He sees she's been left on the battlefield, that she is defenseless, that she is without her dragon, and he turns away from the gates, forces his way back through all the retreating armies and gets to her to save her, giving his life in the process to get her back within the walls of Winterfell. This gives you that incredible character moment between the two, that brilliant piece of performance by Emilia Clarke, but also much better establishes the idea that the North do not care about Dany. Nobody tried to help her, even though she had literally shielded them from the dead. Right, so here we are then, we're all back in Winterfell. Jon is swooping around, completely lost in the storm. All our major characters are back within the safety of the walls, and the dead are now piling up outside. Archers are trying to shoot them off, but it's obviously not very effective. They are trying to light the trench, and they are failing. They can't do it. And this is a slight, but also quite major twist on the show. Melisandre turns up, and while she has been staring into the fire in the crypt, asking the Lord of Light what to do, she has a slightly different role to play this time. She does not light the trench. Instead, she lights the walls of Winterfell themselves. Think of that as an image. The entire walls of Winterfell burning to stop the dead getting out. Everybody piling off because they want to get burnt as well, but the dead physically unable to even scale the walls. They are completely safe for so long as Melisandre can hold this fire. What I would actually do here is have the spell that's cast on her to change her appearance weakening by the second. You can see it physically aging her. This is taking every bit of magic she has, but Dany and whoever else is inside the walls asks her, can you hold this for long enough for us to get everybody down to the crypts, for us to set ourselves for what's coming? And she says, I think, yes, I can do it. I can just about hold on for this. And then high in the sky above Winterfell, lost in the storm, Jon Snow sees the burning image of Winterfell through the clouds. He knows that's where he has to go, so he starts to fly towards it. But on his way, the Night King catches him in midair, and we get that exact same duel in the skies that we got in the episode. I think it was lovely, beautifully shot by the moon. We get that with the pair of them flying around each other in an air, pecking, going at each other with the claws and everything. That exact bit. Viserion, though, has Rhaegal's number, and he's the dragon that is winning this fight. He almost knocks Jon off. Jon is hanging on by one arm for dear life right above Winterfell, and the Night King swoops above him, looking to make the killing blow, dives down, but goes past him. We think that's it for Jon, but no, the Night King passes harmlessly past him, and he doesn't know what's just gone on. He looks down to see him swooping towards the flaming Winterfell. And back in Winterfell, Melisandre is hanging on for dear life as they're getting the wounded to the crypts, as they're getting their defenses set. And then out of the sky comes Viserion and the Night King, who cleave her into a million pieces. She explodes in a cloud of blood, and he bounds back up into the sky, gone as quickly as he came. Everybody is traumatized. A stunned silence falls over everybody in Winterfell as the flickering, flaming walls slowly begin to burn out, and they realize the gravity of this situation. And just like in the start of the episode, where the noise slowly builds and we can hear the dead animating towards them, we get the same thing again, but this time it sounds different. It sounds like crackling ice and rustling against the wall. They all look around and see the sight of dozens of jagged, horrifying, pointy white legs all coming over the side of the walls. They see ice spiders. Yes, I'd have ice spiders, and I'll tell you absolutely why. Zombies are not scary anymore. We've had so many of them in films, TV, books, gaming, everything. They are done to undead. We do not fear zombies anymore. Whether they run, whether they walk, whether they snarl, whether they bite, they're just zombies. You need to provide a horror unlike anything anyone has ever seen in this episode. You need to give them something that will give them nightmares. Understandably, a good chunk of the troops inside are absolutely horrified by this and begin to flee, but they only run into all the dead who are now coming over the other walls at the same time. When I say ice spiders, by the way, I don't just mean we're talking the size of cars here. These things, huge, monstrous beasties, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 of them coming over the walls. A threat unlike anything we've ever seen in the show before to really throw the audience's expectations and anticipations completely into the bin. And this is where I would make the biggest change from the episode that aired, because I would have Lyanna Mormont die here, yes, but I would also have Brienne of Tarth die, and I would have Tormund die at the same time. They're two characters we've already seen in episode 4. There isn't a whole lot for them to do, if anything, and we really need to get across this idea in this episode that the good guys can lose, that nobody is safe in all of this. Tormund and Brienne were crowd favourites. Everybody loved them. Kill them off in undignified ways. Don't draw it out. Don't make it a big emotional moment. They just die. They just bite it. They're gone. The way Game of Thrones used to kill people. Panic sets in. You have Sam running to the crypts, absolutely terrified. He begs the women and children to let him in. He tells them all he's a coward. He couldn't save Ed. He's got no business being out there. He can't protect anybody. And I would also have pretty much the exact same Arya, Beric, and Hound scene as well, just maybe without the whole bit in the library. They all get themselves into that room with Beric giving his life to save Arya, except this time obviously the Red Woman's not there because she's in a million pieces in the courtyard. That's where she is. As Beric is dying though, he asks Arya to give him the gift of death. He says that he knows what she is and he knows the Lord of Light must have brought him back to protect her, so he asks her if he will shut these brown eyes forever. Of course, Arya duly obliges, but as she's doing so, she remembers the words the Red Woman said to her. She says out loud to nobody in particular, she said the same thing to me, that I would shut eyes forever. Brown eyes, blue eyes, then she just looks at the Hound. Alright, so from here we get back to Jon and the Night King still duking it out in the sky, except I would have Drogon arrive independently of Dany to swing that fight in Jon's favour, to be the one to knock the Night King off his dragon. This just gives the dragons a little bit of agency, shows that they understand what is at stake without merely following others riding them around. This gives Drogon an actual stake in this episode. So the Night King falls to the ground. Jon is still on Rhaegal. He swoops over the Night King and just like Dany did, he burns him with dragonfire. And of course, after surviving all of the flames, Jon does not know what to do. But the Night King instead pulls out his sword and just stands there looking at Jon. And Jon knows the only way he's going to beat him is one-on-one. So he lands his dragon, he dismounts, he draws his sword, and he starts to slowly walk towards the Night King. Is this it? Is this finally the one-on-one you want the audience to think? So Jon slowly starts to march towards him, sword drawn, and you have to have the audience think that finally, after all these encounters and all these stare downs, this is going to be it. This is going to be the one-on-one we've been building to for years and years and years. But then, of course, what does he do? Boom, denied again. We do not get the one-on-one. It's a second tease for that, and this time, rather than running away from him, he has outsmarted Jon. He's dared him to come off his dragon, and he set the dead on him instead. So he scarpers off. Jon tries to charge him, but he gets outnumbered by all the dead, and kind of similar to how the episode does it, I would just have Rhaegal save Jon independently of himself. No Dany, no Drogon. He just sweeps the dead away, burns them off, clears a path for Jon to run to Bran. Oh, and also at this point, we should have seen everybody's eyes reopen just like it did in the episode, but especially Beric's. The next bits all play out pretty much the same. Down in the crypts, the dead Starks rise, but this time, instead of everybody just running around and nothing majorly happened, I would have Ghost down there as well, helping to save everybody. See, give the goodest boy something to do, and I would also have a little moment where Sam has to build up the courage to save everybody. He said he was a coward, but no, when push came to shove, when Gilly was in danger, he saves everybody. Give him that little moment. So just to recap where all of our pieces are going into the final stage of this, you've got Jaime, Grey Worm, anyone else who's still alive, fighting off the undead in the courtyard. You've also got Dany down there as well, on foot, being protected by what is left of the Unsullied. You've got Sam, Gilly, Varys, everybody who's meant to be down in the crypts is down in the crypts. They're all relatively safe now because Sam's stabbing them all up with his little dragon glass sword. You've got Jon now rushing to try and get to Bran, who is still in the Godswood with Theon, and the Night King has just arrived there. Alright, so here's where the major change to the episode comes, where the big problem I think with it lies, and where we can actually change that without really doing too much differently. I have to give some credit here, by the way, to Hello Future Me, who did a very similar video on this subject. He had elements of this very popular old fan theory. He made that work, and this is pretty much along those lines as well, because it's just such a bloody good idea. Everything looks lost. Theon turns to Bran and he says, what are we going to do? And Bran, in that voice Bran has, says that there's only one thing he can do, but he fears it is futile. Theon says it doesn't matter if it's futile. We've got no other choice. Whatever it is, you have to do it. And Bran reluctantly agrees, rolls his eyes into the back of his head. Theon, attempting to buy him time, does the exact same thing he does in the episode, goes after the Night King and the Whites, but is obviously killed for his troubles. And Jon arrives in the courtyard outside the Godswood, unable to get past the dragon. But this time, he does. He's staring it down. He's actually trying to fight it. It looks like he's going to be eaten. And just at the last moment, we hear Dany's voice shouting for her dragon. Now, we've never really established how much the dead really remember of their former lives, but a maternal instinct is surely not too much to ask. And hearing its mother's voice, Viserion turns around to see Dany. Jon shouts, no, Dany, no, don't do it, Dany, no. And then Viserion blasts her with dragonfire. Jon, overcome with grief, no, Dany, no. And the dragon turns around. As he does so, Jon sticks his sword right in its eye, drops it to the ground. Jon kills that dragon, believing that it has just killed Dany. He starts to run to where she was before he hears Theon's scream from the Godswood and realizes there is no time, and he runs to get Bran. And here it is. Here is the big thing that happens, right? Bran has not just walked into some crows. He has used his green seer ability to go all the way back to the moment he saw when the Night King was first created. He's attempting to stop the children of the forest from doing it in the first place. That is the only thing he can think to do to stop the impending horror that is going to roll over Winterfell and later the world. So he walks into the body of the man tied to the tree, and he pleads with them not to do it. You do not know the pain and the horror you will bring to this world, he tells them, and they answer simply, there is no pain and horror in this world like men. Just as the original Three-Eyed Raven told him, the ink on the past is dry. He has failed to change it. But also, just as he was told, it's nice under the sea, but if you spend too long there, you will drown. And Bran is unable to come out of the man's body and back into his own. As that dagger goes into his chest, he is the man tied to the tree. Bran is the Night King. In trying to stop the Night King even being created, Bran inadvertently becomes him and must spend the next tens of thousands of years, or however long it is, waiting for this exact moment to happen again. It's why they are so intrinsically linked. It's why they can see each other in visions. It's why they have all the same abilities, seemingly, and why he so desperately wants to kill him. Knowing that he needs to recreate this exact moment that forces Bran to go back in the past and become him, he is attempting to perpetuate the loop of his own existence. It is that circle. It makes sense with all the lore we've been given before and actually gives us a reason for all of this happening. And then, having continued the cycle and not knowing where the future lies before here, the Night King pulls out his sword and beheads Bran on the spot. Just as Jon arrives in the Godswood, he sees another one of his brothers killed right in front of him. Jon, now overcome with rage, with grief, with anger, with tears streaming down his face, slashes a gap through the Whites around him and charges towards the Night King. And the Night King, of course, having accomplished the only thing he came here to do, is finally happy to let them go one-on-one. You can picture this in your own head. The music would be epic. Jon, with tears literally streaming down his face, struggles to try and overcome a vastly stronger and completely emotionless opponent. It's in slow motion. It's beautifully shot. It's everything we wanted from this moment, but it's not enough. Jon cannot defeat the Night King, and he takes his sword and he stabs him through the shoulder. Jon, screaming, falls to the ground. The Night King looks at two of the undead around him, who shuffle over to lift Jon up in front of them. One of them, crucially, is Beric Dondarrion, the undead Beric Dondarrion. And just like in that moment in Season 4 where the Night King puts his thumb over the face of that baby and slowly starts to turn his eyes blue, he starts to do that to Jon. He wants his brother as one of his generals. It is Bran, after all. He wants Jon. He doesn't want Jon dead. He wants Jon by his side, and he slowly starts to turn him into a white, and we see the blue creeping across his eyes when all of a sudden we hear the sound of a dagger entering someone. The Night King looks down to see the cat's paw dagger buried deep in his chest and looks back up at the undead Beric to see the face of Arya smiling back at him. He shatters into a million pieces. The blade in Jon's arm shatters, and everything around them, just like it does in the episode, drops to the ground. Both Jon and Arya fall to the ground, and Jon, with his eyes barely open at this point, asks Arya, "What did you do?" And Arya just pauses and says, what you told me to do. I stuck him with the pointy end. And that is how I would redo the Battle of Winterfell. It's pretty much exactly what they did. There's not any major extra character death except for Brienne and Tormund, and by and large we hit all the same character beats. We get the same emotional payoffs as we did in that episode, except with 2 or 3 more that we desperately need. Jon and the Night King needed to have some kind of direct conflict in this episode, and we also needed something about his origins, and that pretty much wraps all that up for me, I think. But yes, I'm sure you've got a million ideas of your own if the feedback we've had since that episode aired is anything to go on, so let us know in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. In the meantime, though, thank you so much for watching. You have no idea how long this has taken me to record. My name is Adam, third of his name. I'll see you soon. Mwah.